couple days ago, I posted a video about Project 2025. And so far, it is my lowest watched video of this week, actually, of this month so far, which really disturbs me, period, on so many levels. I wonder whether or not we understand the existential threat posed to our freedom as Black people, and specifically Black women, if Donald Trump is elected. And I'm going to be very blunt. And for people who don't like what I'm saying and don't like that I'm speaking openly about the election, politics is a part of our lives. It impacts every aspect of our lives, and it impacts what kind of workplaces we're subjected to. And when Donald Trump was elected in 2016, there was an uptick in anti-Black racism, anti-Black racist violence, and definitely, anecdotally, discrimination in the workplace because people felt unleashed. They felt free to do whatever they want. And I can promise you that if you thought 2016 to 2020 was bad, it will be even worse if he gets back in this time. This is a person who's clearly in cognitive decline, who is clearly not okay. And the people that he is surrounding himself with this time, and the people who will be in the Oval Office this time, are not going to be the people who were there when he was elected the first time, people who were there to put guardrails around him. His former chief of staff, who now openly says that he's a fascist. His former head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, who says openly that he's a fascist and probably the most dangerous person in politics today. These are people who worked with him, right? Former members of his staff, his vice president, who he apparently didn't care if he got killed on January 6th. None of these people who were around him then are around him now. Now all he has around him is white nationalist, Christo nationalist fascist. He's surrounded by people who believe and think as he does. And if people think that Project 2025 will not be implemented under Donald Trump, they are living in fantasy land, right? It is very clear that most of his followers are cult members. If you know what the hallmarks of cult membership are, it's very, very obvious. But I'm more concerned about those of us who have allowed ourselves to become apathetic. The United States is not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, especially if you're Black. It's not perfect. But what I always tell people is that it can always be worse, because it can be. And so if we don't want to wake up in a country where folks are disappearing and being rounded up and deported without due process, and if people think that they're only going to deport the, quote, immigrants, unquote, I can promise you that in the past when this happened in America, and it has happened in America in the past, and I may post some articles to educate some of us because we seem to not know our history. There was roundup of Mexican Americans who were deported back to Mexico, and many of them were not immigrants. Many of them were not illegals. Many of them were Mexican citizens who were rounded up in the 1920s. I believe it was during the Hoover administration, right? Donald Trump's rally at Madison Square Garden, which to me is very reminiscent of the Nazi rally in 1939 in Madison Square Garden. This is history repeating because we have chosen not to pay attention. These things are cyclical. And if we think that the things that happened in the 1930s can't happen again, you're not paying attention. Project 2025 could very well be the tip of the iceberg. So I really hope that those of us who have the ability to register and vote on the same day, and this is a possibility in several states, Maryland, for example, is one of them. If you haven't voted before, vote today. Vote in this election. If you're not registered, make it your business to find out whether or not you can be registered and register. Vote absentee if you can't go on November 5th. But whatever you do, please vote. Please let your voice be heard. Let your voice be counted. Because this is not only the world that you will have to live in, it's the world that your children and your grandchildren will have to live in. And frankly, that's what I'm most concerned about. I don't even live in the United States anymore Because, I'm a student of history. I have a degree in political science. I have a law degree. I knew the signs when I saw them, and I decided that it was time for me to leave. But I still have people that I love deeply and dearly that live in the United States. I have a son. I have family. I have nieces and nephews, right? I have grandnieces and nephews now. And I care about what kind of world they're going to have to live in. And the things that are happening, even the things that have already happened, what the court system, the Supreme Court, the federal bench, these are actions that Donald Trump took that will impact our lives for a very long time. Even if he's not reelected, the harm has already been made at multiple levels, and we will be feeling it for the next 20 to 30 years, because these judges have been appointed, most of them for life at the federal level. So, let's not even talk about the fact that he likely would be able to fill at least 2 Supreme Court seats in the next 4 years, because Clarence Thomas and Alito are old, and they have already signaled that if Donald Trump is reelected, they will step down so that he can replace them. These are serious things. And we have to start thinking and behaving like serious people as Black people. Sitting this out is not an option. Voting for Jill Stein is not an option. You might as well just vote for Donald Trump. We are in a 2-party system, and you have 2 choices. And you either choose the fascist, and that is what he is, or you choose the other candidate. But make no mistake that if you stay home or if you vote for a third party, you're still voting. You're just voting for him. So if you want a different experience and you want a different world, the key is to vote against fascism, and then not sit on your hands after Election Day, but organize and put your foot on the neck of the president and ensure that she does the things that she promised that she would do. And it's going to take all of us to demand that it's not business as usual after this election, because the people who want Project 2025 are not going to quit. Even if he doesn't get in, they're grooming J.D. Vance, they're grooming several other people to take his place and to push their agenda. And so if we want a different existence in the United States, if we want a world where super rich people don't get to call the shots and don't get to turn us all into slaves, because frankly, that's where the workforce is going. When you see Elon Musk pouring $75 million into Donald Trump's campaign, he's making an investment on something. He's not doing it for no reason. He has multiple DOJ investigations. He's been sued multiple times for the type of workplaces and the anti-Black racism in his Tesla and other places. These are facts. You can just Google them, right? He's not doing what he's doing for no reason. These people are not acting in your best interest. Not if you're Black, not if you're a person of color. And I'm astounded by the number of non-Black immigrants who are voting for Donald Trump when Donald Trump don't care nothing about y'all. He don't even like y'all. He's planning to round a whole lot of y'all up and deport you, whether you are naturalized, illegal, or legal. They're not going to spend the time. Stephen Miller, one of his acolytes, is talking about going back and looking at naturalized citizen applications and denaturalizing people. That means taking your citizenship away from you and deporting you if they think they have found any irregularities. Right? These are the things that they're planning to do. This is ethnic cleansing. This is getting rid of Black and brown people to ensure that white people remain the majority of forever. That is what this is all about. The seeking to force white women to have babies, because that's what all this anti-abortion stuff is about. They are afraid of being outnumbered. They are afraid that if Black and brown people outnumber them, we will seek to do to them what they have done to us for all this time, not realizing that we aren't them. We just want equity and equality. We're not seeking revenge, and they're lucky we're not. But we're not like them, but they believe we are. And so they are trying to set guardrails in place of their own to ensure that they aren't outnumbered. The question becomes, are you going to let them? And too many of us are complacent. Too many of us are so, apathetic about all of this. Too many of us are more worried about what is happening in other places than we are what is happening in our own backyards. And what I will say to those who are concerned about Gaza is, again, it could be worse. And I hate what is happening in Gaza. I just don't talk about it on my platform. But I recognize and understand all the political issues around it. And I have chosen not to make that the center of how I chose to vote this year, because I realize that while I don't like what is being happened and I don't necessarily agree with how it has been handled by the Biden administration, I understand that there's a whole history behind this, and that the Biden administration's Israel policy is a policy that the United States government has had since Israel became a state. It's not a new thing. And what I realize is that if Donald Trump were president, they probably would have turned Gaza into a golf course by now. And even more people would be dead than who have died. And if you think it's a lot, and it is, it would be even worse. And so we have to make strategic decisions and thoughtful decisions about our vote. And it can't be based on one issue. It can't be based just on abortion. It can't just be based on the Supreme Court. It can't just be based on Gaza, even though all of those things should be consideration. At the end of the day, it has to be based on who is going to cause us, as Black people in America, the least harm. Who's going to hurt us and seek to hurt us the least. And that's how I decided, and that's how I made my decision to vote. And I voted already. I made it my business to make sure I casted my absentee ballot while I was in the States recently, because I wanted to make sure I got it done. But I really believe that any of us who are citizens of the United States and have a right to vote must make it our business to make our voices heard in this election. This is the most consequential election, in my opinion, in the history of the United States. And I have, as I said, I'm a student of history. And it's definitely the most consequential election in my lifetime. And I have voted in every election since I was 18 years old. And I am very concerned that enough of us are not taking this seriously enough. It doesn't matter where you live, whether you live in a swing state or not, your vote matters, because it's not just about who is president. It is about who is on your school board. It is about who is on your city council. It is about who is your state representative. It is about who is in Congress. And too many of us have dropped the damn ball and never paid attention to any of these things. We only look up when it's a presidential election year. But these people that I just mentioned impact your everyday life way more than the president ever will, right? They are the people who are burning books and seeking to distort our history and not tell the truth about American history. They're the people who are infiltrating our boards of education, our city council, our state houses. And if we want to get rid of this cult, and I believe that if democracy is to prevail and survive in the United States, this cult has to be put down. We must pay attention to who is representing us, not just in the White House, not just in the Congress. Who's on your city council? Do you know? Who's representing you on the Board of Education? Do you know? That's your job. Find out who these people are and vote accordingly. And if you don't like who they are, run yourself. But don't allow people to make decisions for you and you not know who they are. And too many of us don't even know who our representatives are. We're apathetic. And now we've gotten to a place where we are at the brink of disaster. And I really believe that the United States of America is at the brink of disaster if we don't vote wisely this election. And so I'm urging people to watch the video I did about Project 2025 and how it could impact your workplace rights. But I urge people to read that document. Read it. Understand what the intention is. Because it's not just about dismantling workplace rights. It's about dismantling pretty much most of the rights that we have come to think is our human right, is our born God-given right in this United States. They are planning to undo a lot. And all they need is someone in the Oval Office who will allow them to do it. And they definitely have that person now running as the Republican candidate. And so they have their blueprint and they have every intention of implementing it. The question becomes, what are you prepared to do? And what you can do is vote. Vote against Project 2025 unless that's the kind of society you want to live in. These people call themselves the Party of Freedom, but instead they're spending quite a bit of time talking about how many freedoms they can take away from anybody who is not white, male, and wealthy. And so it is our business to decide that we want to do something different. And this is your chance, likely your last chance, to undo the damage that started, not just in 2016. In my opinion, this all started when Ronald Reagan got into the White House, and it has accelerated ever since then, while most of us have just not been paying attention, right? But it just went on hyper mode in 2016. So we have really got to take this stuff seriously. And I just felt in my spirit that I needed to come on here and say that. We really need to take this seriously. It's time to wake up and act. It really is. And so I'm ringing the bell. The only way that I know how to do it is to come on here and say what I'm thinking right now and how concerned I am about what I see. And so I am just urging everyone, turn off the social media, turn off the television, stop listening to the polls. Polls mean absolutely nothing. I learned that in statistics in college. What matters is using your voice. What matters is using your vote. You can poll 1,000 people and ask them the same question and then tell everybody, 90% of those 1,000 people feel this way. That doesn't mean that those 1,000 people are representative of the rest of the country. And that's basically how polling works, to make it as simplified as possible, right? So don't pay attention to polls. Pay attention to what people say they are going to do and believe them. The Republican candidate has been very clear about what he intends to do, just as the Democratic candidate has been. And so the question becomes, who, based on what they say they intend to do, is the person that you would want to represent you? Who is the person that you think is most likely to protect your rights? Not just as Black people, but as Americans. Who is more likely to take your freedoms away from you, right? That's the things that we have to ask ourselves. Who is going to cause us the most and the least harm? And then vote accordingly. But we cannot afford to sit on our hands. We cannot afford to sit this one out. We cannot afford to throw our vote away on a third-party vote. We cannot afford to care more about what happens anywhere else than what happens to democracy in the United States. Because if democracy in the United States ceases to exist, the United States will no longer be a force for good to do anything anywhere else. So I feel like I've gotten that off my chest. I'm sure people will have responses and thoughts to what I'm going to say, but I said what I said and I mean it, because I just think now is the time. If we're going to say things about what's about to happen and what very well could happen on November 5th, now is the time to say it. I don't want anyone to wake up on November 6th and the outcome isn't what you would like it to be, and you didn't participate and you didn't vote and you didn't act. At least I know I can sleep at night, and I don't even live in the U.S. So honestly, people could say I shouldn't even care as much, but I do care. And so I need to know that when I wake up that I've done everything that I could possibly do, and I said everything I should say to try to help those around me open their eyes and open their brains and see what could be. We have a possibility of something that could be wonderful on November 6th or pretty horrific on November 6th. And so I really do hope that those of us that are U.S. citizens that have the ability to make our voices heard, because there are a lot of people who live in the U.S. who can't. A lot of people are in the United States as illegal immigrants, and they work and they help to make our lives better. They keep our food prices down, they keep our housing costs down, but they don't get to have a voice. They pay taxes, but they don't get to have a voice in this process, but we do. And so I think that those of us who have the ability to have a voice, please use it on November 5. Please use it before then if you can. If you can vote early, I highly encourage you to do that. And as I said, for us Black folk, take November 6 and 7 off if you can as well. Give yourself a break. I can't wait to turn on YouTube and not see any more political ads. I can't wait. I dream of the day when I can turn on social media and not see Donald Trump's name or see his face or hear his voice. That is like a dream that I have. I wish that we will all do what is necessary to make that dream a reality, because I'm clearly biased. I am. I think he's the biggest threat to democracy in my lifetime. I've never felt that way about any other political candidate. I was not a fan of many of them, but I didn't feel that they were a threat to the country. So when George Bush was elected, even though I think that the election was stolen the first round, I didn't like go to sleep at night with any trepidation and feel like he was going to destroy the country or anything like that. I thought, okay, he's not the person I voted for, but fine. He's going to not do everything that I would like him to do, but it's okay. He's not going to harm the country, right? This person is, I believe, an existential threat to our country and to our democracy, right? And so I feel it my responsibility to get on my platform and say that quite clearly, right? And Project 2025 is just one example of how big a threat he is. It's not the only one. Every time he opens his mouth, he makes it clear what a threat he is, right? And unless you're a cult member, it's very clear. And so a lot of us are just thinking, oh, it'll be fine. It won't be fine. It won't be fine. And I think when people say things, you have to believe what they say. You have to believe that he means the things that he says. And I believe him. I believed him the first time. And the only thing that I believe controlled him the first time was that there were people around him who didn't believe the things that he said. I don't think we're going to have that safety net the second time around. So I do see him as an existential threat to democracy because we have seen that democracy barely survived the first time, right? And so I really encourage you to vote, and don't just vote in the presidential election. Vote down your entire ballot. Educate yourself about who is running and vote up and down the entire ballot. And do it every election. Not every 4 years, every 2 years, people run for the House of Representatives. People run for city council. People run for mayor. People run for Board of Education. Whatever they're running for, make it your business to pay attention. Because all of what is happening now is happening because too many of us weren't paying attention. Too many of us were asleep at the wheel. Too many of us have been asleep at the wheel. And it's death by 1,000 pricks. These things don't happen overnight. They happen over time. The right is organized. They always have been. Those people who wanted to take women's rights away in terms of making decisions, making medical decisions for yourself, right? They have gotten rid of abortion. Now they're coming for contraception because they want to force white women to have more babies. That's really what it is. The rest of us women are kind of collateral damage. Thankfully, I don't have that big of a concern, but I still care about women's rights. Right? Because if you can't control your body, you're not a free person. You don't have freedom if you can't decide whether you're going to be a parent or not. And so I really think that we have to pay attention as women, especially Black women, because whatever bad thing happens to the rest of them, it's always worse for us as Black people and especially as Black women, because we're at the bottom of the food chain. So whatever happens that gets bad is always the worst for us. So we have to pay attention and we have to vote to protect our rights and protect the rights of everyone else, as we always do. But our rights are always at the top of the chopping block. So if you think whatever is coming is just going to happen to them, think again. All righty? So I hope this little mini rant of mine will reach somebody and make them stop and think. Please read Project 2025. Please register to vote if you have not already. Please early vote if you're registered. Please early vote. And please, if you don't early vote, please vote on November 5th. Thanks for watching. Bye.